the first parsha in the Torah is the parsha of Avadim. So just two things. The first is, I remember years ago, many years ago, so through Torah links, I had a chavrusa that was becoming from. He was learning Torah for the first time. And the first time I learned with him was Parshas Mishpatim. He said he wanted to learn a little bit of Chumash, so we sat down and we started learning Parshas Mishpatim. And the first parsha in the Torah talks about slavery. Everybody knows, I don't remember what amendment it is, but Lincoln freed the slaves, and it was considered a very big deal because the ones that were pro-slavery, in hindsight, are treated as being very immoral, right? All men were created equally. And if that's the case, he was very bothered by Hayitachin that the Torah seems to be very pro-slavery. I'll tell you something interesting. We should probably discuss this off record, but there was a certain Gadol. He was a Talmud of the Heilige Chassam Sofer, who, if you know, you know, at one point he became a Rav in New Orleans, Louisiana. Yeah, he was a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer. Then he went and he studied in the University of Hungary. Eventually he made it to the United States. He needed a job and he becomes a Rav in New Orleans. Now this is when Louisiana was part of the Confederate States of America. So it was during the Civil War when several states in the United States had seceded, and these were the southern states who were very pro-slavery. And he comes and he gives his first Shabbos Shuvah Drasha. You can actually find this Shabbos Shuvah Drasha if you know how to look. But the bottom line is he comes and he gives his first Drasha, and what he did was what any good rabbi would do, and that is he preached to the converted, right? Literally. So he gets up and he says that I know that this Chabura are very pro-slaves. And he says it's okay because open the Torah, Parshas Mishpatim, the first law that Moses gives over to the Jewish people right after the Torah is the laws of slaves. So this is part and parcel of everything that it is that we do and we believe in. And he goes and he bangs out this drasha. It's mamish mind-boggling. This was a real Talmud Chacham. This tshuva svarim from him. Again, if you know, you know. But the bottom line is that's what this Adam Gadol got up, and this was his Shabbos Shuvah drasha, like 1862 in New Orleans. Love to have been there. But this is what's going on, right? So, but what's Takid Pshat? Right? It's something that is really hard to wrap our heads around. At the end of the day, the Torah is in many ways the moral code for all future generations. How do we understand the fact that there was slavery in the Torah? So this is above my pay grade, but just there's one Maramakim that if you don't know this Maramakim, you don't have a right to even ponder this question. And that is, the Gemara says in Masechtas Kedushin Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, it says, Ki toiv lo imach. Right? It says in the Parsha of Avadim, Ki toiv lo imach. What does it mean? Ki toiv lo imach. Say Chazal, imach b'meichel, v'imach b'mishta. That if somebody purchases an eved, he has to be with him. Imach b'meichel and imach b'mishta. He should eat with you. He should drink with you. Shloitei ata oichel pas nikia. You should not be eating good bread, and he's eating not good bread. You shouldn't be drinking aged wine, and he's drinking a 2026 something. Sweet wine. Al gabe muchim, you're sleeping on like a very soft pillow and blanket for Yoshin al gabe ateven, and he's in the barn. That's where he's sleeping. Mikan amru. Chazal said, you know what you see from this halacha ki tov la'imach kol hakoyne eved ivri kekoyne adon la'atzmai. That if somebody acquires an eved ivri, he thinks he bought an eved and buy an eved. He was koyne adon la'atzmai. Take a look at Tosfos. Tosfos says, I understand. Kol hakoyne eved ivri kekoyne adon la'atzmai. I just learned this Chazal. I hear imach b'meichel, imach b'mishta, shloitei ato oichel pasniki v'oichel paskiber. You weren't kind of an adain. Maybe you weren't kind of an eved. You thought, this eved, he's going to do. I'm going to say jump, and he's going to say how high, right? But it's not mamish like that. But how are you kind of adain latzmai? You're eating the same foods. I mean, if he was eating better food than you, it's kind of adain latzmai. But that's not what's going on. So Tais quotes a Yerushalmi. Quote, you know what the oimik of Kekayna Adam Latzma is? Because sometimes a person only has one pillow. If he's going to take the pillow for himself, he's not going to be Mekayim. And you know what he's going to have to do? He's going to have to go ahead and he's going to have to give it to his Eved. So the Kitov La'imach is, because that's true, if you have two pillows, you're both getting a pillow. But what if you only have one? So you have to fight for the pillow. You know who's getting it? You know who's getting it? He's getting it. And that's why Kalakoina Eved Ivri is Kakoina Adoin La'atzmai. You're actually going and you're buying an Eved for yourself. It's true, there's a parsha of Avdus in the Torah, but it's done in the Torah way. It's done in an extremely sensitive way. And really, you have to understand the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and you have to understand the Mishpatei HaTorah before you even weigh in on a conversation like this. In Mishnah Torah, when the Torah chazes over the parsha of Avodim, so the Torah talks about the Eved Ivri, and the Torah talks about the fact that he goes out after 6 years, and if he chooses to stay on board a little bit longer, so it is the parsha of the Nirtza. Over there, the Lashon HaPasuk is as follows. It's going to be, if the Eved Ivri is going to come to you and he's going to say, Lo yeitzei me'imach, I don't want to leave. Ki ahevcha, I love you. Vespeisecha in your house. Ki toiv lo yimach. Right? Ki toiv lo yimach. Because it's pretty good. Right? Why would an Eved Ivri ever want to stay on board? It's ki toiv lo yimach, because kalakoina evet kakoina adan la'atzmai. In a situation like that, v'lokachta samartzeya v'nosata ba'oznai uvadeles v'hoyelecha eved olam, etc., etc., etc. But the Lutzker Rav in his Naim L'Torah, we're going to end with this, says that we know wherever it says Vayehi in the Torah, Einei Ela Lashon Tsar. Wherever it says V'haya, it's always a Lashon of Simcha. Said the Lutzker Rav, V'haya ki yomarei lecha. Lo yeitzei me'imach ki ahevcha v'espeisecha ki tov lo yimach. On what planet, in which part of the world is there such a thing that somebody was being held hostage and now all of a sudden he's allowed to go free and he says, you know something? Lo yeitzei me'imach ki ahevcha. I love my captors. V'espeisecha ki tov lo yimach, because you've been treating me so well. It's never, ever, ever happened in history, with the exception of amongst the Jewish people. And being that there's an Indian where it's even shayach that an Eved would say that I want to stay. Lo yeitzei chavshi ki tov lo yimach, says the Lutzker Rav v'haya. This is an incredible simcha. Simcha ubesura toiva liyisrael. Shenitnu lo min hashamayim chukim tzadikim umishpatim yesharim hapoisrim es yachsei ha'oived v'amavet ba'ofen kozeh. Sho'avet oimer ahavti es adoini v'adoin einoi gadol b'beisai ma'avet ba'uma loy b'meichel v'loy b'mishta v'loy b'shina ki toiv lo imach. He says you want to bring out the beauty of the Torah. It's true there's a parsha of Avodim, because unfortunately sometimes people are forced into situations like this. But don't for 1 minute visualize the relationship between the master and the slave in the same way that maybe it played itself out in the last few hundred years. That's not what the visual is. It's a visual of ki tov lo yimach. It's a visual of kalakoina evet kakoina adam la'atzmai. That's why there was even an Indian of a nirtza. Where would you come to such a thing? Ahavti es adoini. Imagine those words, right? Where would you even come to that? The teretz is because the Mishpatei HaTorah force us to do things differently. They train us to do things differently. And that's v'haya. That's v'haya ki yoimara eved. And the reason is because ein lecha simcha ubesura tova liyisrael shenitnu lo chukim min hashamayim. There's nothing that brings out the beauty of the Torah sometimes than the way the Torah navigates these very, very challenging situations. So yeah, it's true, there was a parsha of Avdus in the Torah, and without a doubt, once upon a time, it's definitely something that made a lot of sense, right? There's no question in the world. This is the way the world was. But the Torah, rising above, says that although it's true, there's an Indian that you can have an Eved, but remember, ki tov lo yimach, ad kidei kach, kalakoine Eved, gekoine adan la'atz.